Hey there and welcome back to NBA 2K18's My League mode. My name is Pete and today we are hopefully able to complete the remainder of the Legionnaires' first playoff series against the New York Knicks. In the last episode we went deep into detail for Game 1, we had an almost unedited walkthrough of the first quarter, and if you haven't watched that episode already then do me a favor and go ahead and do that. I put a ton of effort into it, and even if it's quite a bit longer than usual, I think it's one of the best episodes in this series. To all of those who did watch it, welcome back. We continue right where we left off last time. The Legionnaires lead the series 1-0 and we have another game at home coming up. So, with one big win in the books, I think we're ready for Game 2, and I was actually thinking about starting Andre Flanders at the small forward, but then I saw the Knicks had already made some adjustments. Carmelo Anthony is starting this one for the Knicks, and so no need for us to make any changes. Rodney Hood can continue to start. Speaking of the start, the beginning of this game was pretty rough. New York quickly went on an 8-0 run to start things off. Frank Ntilikina scored 8 of New York's first 10 points in this game. The Legionnaires, on the other hand, committed a lot of turnovers and got their shots blocked repeatedly. For us, the only thing that really worked well these first few minutes was the defense on Carmelo Anthony, where Rodney Hood did an outstanding job and racked up 2 quick blocks. Still, the Legionnaires did not really get going. Labissiere very quickly picked up a second foul, and so midway through the first quarter the Legionnaires were already down by 10 with a score of 18-8. After the first time out then, the team woke up a bit and slowly started to close the gap. Josh Richardson got himself a few big baskets driving to the rim, and so the Legionnaires slowly found their way back into the game. Rajon Rondo then an unlikely hero late in the first, cutting the lead down to 1 with a 3-pointer in the layup. The Knicks would then get one more basket late in the first, but the score after 12 minutes not as bad as I had feared after the rough start. The Knicks have a small lead and they're up in front 26-23. The second quarter then once again started slow, but this time for both sides. New York was then a bit quicker to find a rhythm. Carmelo Anthony went to the free throw line a lot. He was also able to score a few big baskets from the field, and the Legionnaires were once again down by as many as 7. With about 3.5 minutes left to play in the quarter then, Mohamed Bamba with a beautiful behind-the-back pass to Josh Richardson, who is able to convert the layup despite the foul. He is also able to hit the bonus free throw, and the Legionnaires have cut the lead down to 3 again. With about 25 seconds remaining in the quarter, Rodney Hood then with a big basket of the mid-range jump shot. This would bring the Legionnaires within 1, and it was also the last basket before the halftime. So we head into the break with a close game, the Knicks up by 1, 45-44. Currently still the team in control of this one, but the Legionnaires are scratching and clawing and show no signs of giving up just yet. Some of the key players at the half for the Legionnaires, without a doubt Josh Richardson again. He is up to 16 points in only 19 minutes of action, and definitely once again the biggest threat the Legionnaires have on offense. Labissiere with 7 points and 5 rebounds, not a bad stat line either. Tyler had 6 points and 2 assists at the half, while Rajon Rondo still a surprisingly big factor for the Legionnaires off the bench, still with the 5 points he scored in the first quarter, but no turnovers yet, and I have a good feeling there's more where that came from. Rodney Hood's stat line that once again showing that he's working hard in every aspect of the game. 4 points, 4 assists, a steal and 2 blocks after 17 minutes, doing a fantastic job defending Carmelo Anthony, who is currently the Knicks scoring leader with 15, but shooting a pretty bad 5 of 16 from the field. Kristaps Porzingis is pretty quiet so far in this one. He only took 3 shots so far and made 2 of them, but he's also already up to 3 blocks, so the defensive presence is there. Quarter number 3 then started off pretty good for the Legionnaires. On the first possession of the second half, Rodney Hood gets himself the steal of Ntilikina's pass. The ball then finds Ulis, who makes the layup, and for the first time in this game, the Legionnaires have a narrow 1-point lead. Sadly though, that lead wouldn't last all that long. The Knicks worked hard on defense and got themselves 5 steals this quarter. Kristaps Porzingis finally got going on offense, and the Knicks ended the quarter on a quick 6-0 run to once again build themselves an 8-point lead. Andre Flanders kept us in the game with 11 points this quarter, but the rest of the team failed to step up for the most part. Once again, we made a lot of mistakes, and so the result of the 3 quarters more than fair. The Knicks lead by 8 going into the final quarter, 74-66. The Legionnaires, though, did not give up. Big baskets from Mitch Dennis, Bryce Johnson and Andre Flanders closed the gap, and with about 8 minutes left to play, Josh Richardson hits a big 3-pointer, and all of a sudden the Legionnaires are once again up by 1. From here on out then the game went back and forth, but this time the Legionnaires held on, and so with barely 2 minutes left to play in the game, they are still up by 1 point. The pick and roll with Ulis and Johnson then does not work quite as intended. Johnson fumbles the ball, then gets blocked by Porzingis, and even though he grabs the rebound, on the follow-up attempt he can also not make the basket. About 1.5 minutes remain on the clock and the Knicks now have the ball, and Ulis hedging for the steal here triggers the collapse of Louisville's defense. The big men have to help out on Ntilikina's shot attempt, and that leaves Hernangomez wide open for the offensive rebound, and out of position, Bryce Johnson has no other choice but to foul. At the line, Hernangomez then makes the first and ties the game up, and free throw number 2 is also good, and so the Knicks are now back on top. The Legionnaires then run a good play for Josh Richardson, and the paint was wide open for the drive here, but a total of 3 defenders then collapse on Richardson, and so one more attempt at the basket gets rejected by Porzingis. We now have 6 seconds left to get a shot off, and the ball once again finds Richardson, this time wide open from 3, but he still cannot get the shot to fall. With the clock ticking down and New York in possession of the ball, Rodney Hood then makes a horrible mistake on defense, leaving Carmelo Anthony wide open for the easy basket and a 3-point New York lead. Burning their first time out, the Legionnaires now with the chance to go 2 for 1 here if they burn a bit of time, and they do so almost to a fault, which leads to a heavily contested 3-pointer from Rodney Hood. After the rebound then, Mohamed Bamba immediately with the foul to stop the clock. A good choice, but Hernangomez still converts on his first free throw attempt, and with about half a minute left to play, the Knicks now have a 2-possession lead. However, Hernangomez fails to make the second one, and so the Legionnaires are running. Richardson and Ulis are pushing the pace, and even though the shot attempt here might not have been the smartest decision in the world, Richardson still greens the release and once again comes up big when the Legionnaires need him the most. Louisville now within only 1 point, and with shot and game clock almost tied, we decide to foul as early as possible. This now puts Frank Ntilikina at the line, who reliably makes both free throws, and so with 20 seconds left to play, the Legionnaires once again take a timeout to advance the ball past half court and to set up for the final push. With a chance to get a quick 2, Rodney Hood blows by Anthony and pulls up. The jumper misses, but Bamba grabs the rebound, but his putback attempt also misses, and so Porzingis grabs the rebound, gets it to Ntilikina, and we once again have to hack to stop the action. Poor results here on 2 promising attempts. Hood should have probably driven all the way to the basket, but I think Bamba will kick himself the most for not making the easy attempt right underneath the rim. Now, you probably weren't able to see it here, but Ntilikina actually missed the first free throw, but unfortunately he still makes the second one, and so in 12 seconds we now have to score twice to have a chance of winning this one. The attack here, however, takes a little bit too long, and then for some reason Richardson spots up inside of the 3-point arc, and even though his jumper is once again good, this now only brings us within 2, with as few as 3 seconds left on the clock. The Knicks then decide to play it safe and take a timeout, and out of the inbounds play I then wanted to foul, but for some reason nobody could be bothered, and so our players only stand and watch as the Knicks pass it around to let the clock wind down and end up stealing Game 2 in Louisville. A disappointing loss here after a competitive match, maybe with the occasional mistake down the line, but falling short after several strong comebacks, that has to be heartbreaking. Of course, we won't leave without a quick look at the best performers this game, and standing out for the Legionnaires is once again Josh Richardson. Apart from his scoring, he didn't do much, but his 27 points led all scorers tonight, and Richardson's performance was definitely not the reason we lost. Looking at the minutes distribution for this game, however, that might have been a reason, because apart from Mohamed Bamba, not a single one of our starters even played 30 minutes. And looking at Andre Flanders here, for example, shooting 4 of 13, or Bryce Johnson, who only shot 3 of 10, a few more minutes for the starters might have been the smart choice in this game. On the other hand though, the Knicks were not overwhelming in that department either. Carmelo Anthony shot an abysmal 9 of 28, and Tyreke Evans also only made 6 of his 19 attempts. Still, here we are now, tied at 1 game apiece, and so are the majority of the other series in the first round. Out west, the Clippers secure a 28-point victory over the Rockets to tie the series, while the Thunder go up 2-0 after a 3-point victory against the Timberwolves. The Warriors beat the Suns by 14 and also tie things up, and the Jazz win in Sacramento and also even things out. As expected then, the Cavaliers win another one against the Raptors, but the 5-point victory here was definitely a close affair. Brooklyn then steals the second game in a row in Chicago, and the Sixers beat the Hornets by 8, and that series is now also tied. So, we are now switching arenas. We are traveling to New York for the next 2, where the Knicks will host us in Madison Square Garden for Game 3. And on his home court, a certain Carmelo Anthony started off scorching hot. Anthony just couldn't miss for the first few minutes of this game. He scored 11 of the Knicks' first 13 points, and so the Legionnaires quickly found themselves trailing by 5. However, we were once again able to rally behind a strong Josh Richardson, who led the charge as the Legionnaires went on a 12-2 run in the middle of the quarter. The Knicks then got some valuable production out of point guard Frank Ntilikina, who not only scored a few important baskets but also got himself 2 steals and 1 block in the first quarter. This kept the Knicks in the game, at least until the Legionnaires once again went on a 10-2 run, including big points for Deontay Davis and the first 3-pointer of the game for Mitch Dennis, and so at the end of the first quarter, the Legionnaires already with a sizable 8-point lead. In the second quarter then, we quickly built on that, and Rodney Hood was a big factor in this one. He scored 11 points this quarter and forced the Knicks to burn through timeout after timeout. That didn't really help them though, they simply could not stop the run. Mohamed Bamba was also very strong in this quarter with 7 points and 6 rebounds. And while the Knicks shot 37% this quarter, the Legionnaires were up to 60, ultimately winning this 12-minute stretch by 14 points, and we head into the halftime break with a commanding 22-point lead. Apart from Carmelo Anthony's hot start, pretty much everything went right for us this game, and that also didn't change in the second half, where the Legionnaires immediately got going with 2 quick 3-pointers. And yes, you are seeing that right, we actually started the second half with the second unit. Josh Richardson then also decided to take part in the fun. He hit 2 triples in a row to keep the Knicks at bay, and even though the Knicks had the occasional 4-0, 6-0 run, we were always quick to shut them down. Mitch Dennis then also with back-to-back threes. Still, at least in this quarter the Knicks were fighting, and so they actually went on to win the quarter by 3 points. However, considering that for the majority of the quarter our second unit was on the floor, I wasn't really worried too much at that point. In the fourth quarter then, things started to get a bit more uncomfortable. The Knicks started off strong on a 7-0 run, but the Legionnaires were still up by a sizable margin. Our starters hadn't played for pretty much an entire quarter at that point and were well rested. Still, the Knicks were able to continue their push. Tyreke Evans, Carmelo Anthony and Kristaps Porzingis were the main guys for them in this quarter, and they actually managed to turn a 19-point deficit into only being down by 8. This layup from Carmelo Anthony here, then the first time the Knicks actually came within single digits, and at that point we didn't even have 4 minutes left on the clock. Skal Labissière then ultimately a deciding player down the stretch. He put an absolute poster on Porzingis with just over 2 minutes left to play, and still I was fairly confident that we would walk away with the victory. Porzingis though embraced the challenge and quickly drilled a 3, and at that point I was getting a bit anxious, because the Knicks were now within striking distance, only down by 5 points. It was Labissière then again who got us some breathing room, finishing through contact and making the tough layup. The bonus free throw then good as well, and the Legionnaires once again up by 8. A miss from New York then quickly gets turned into offense by Josh Richardson, who sinks the dagger and puts the Legionnaires up by 10 with a bit over 1 minute left, and from that point on we would only trade baskets at the free throw line. Not enough though to fuel a run for anyone, and so with time ticking down and a 7-point lead we can dribble out the clock. The Legionnaires hold on to this one after being up by as much as 27 points, and even though they were close to choking away the lead here, they still managed to steal a game in the Garden and now have a 2-1 series lead over the Knicks. For the Knicks, I quickly want to mention Anthony and Porzingis. Those two were absolutely spectacular tonight. When Anthony got hot, he was just unstoppable, and Porzingis' stat line might have been the best of the game. He shot 10 of 15 from the field for 26 points, and also added 10 rebounds, 3 assists and 2 blocks. For the Legionnaires, then a familiar face at the top of the scoring list. The ever-efficient Josh Richardson finishes this game with 23 points, ahead of a strong Rodney Hood who probably was the main reason that Anthony didn't explode for 40. Andre Flanders only saw limited action tonight in 19 minutes, but those were still good enough for 12 points, the same amount that Mitch Dennis had, with all of his points coming off of 3-pointers. Ulis back to his usual role as the creator on offense in this one. He put up 11 points and 7 assists, while all of our big men posted pretty good stat lines as well. Bamba with 8 points and 11 rebounds, Labissière with 7 and 8, Bryce Johnson with 6 and 9, albeit on horrible efficiency, and Deontay Davis with 6 points, 10 rebounds, 3 steals and the block. So, despite playing on the road, we now have a 2-1 series lead, and let's quickly see what the rest of the league did. Houston beats the Clippers in LA to also go up 2-1. Last year's champions, the Thunder, are once again looking strong, now up 3-0 against the Timberwolves. Phoenix wins Game 3 against Golden State, and Utah takes the lead against Sacramento. Out east, the Cavaliers also go up 3-0, however, the Raptors currently with an injury to DeMar DeRozan, which is definitely not helping their case in this series. Brooklyn also surprisingly goes up 3-0 against the Bulls, and the Sixers take a 2-1 lead against the Hornets. And I would say let's not waste any time, and instead let's jump right into game number 4, once again in New York. Now, this game began pretty slow. The Legionnaires only shot 1 of 7 from the field to start. The Knicks weren't much better though, with 2 of 8. However, we were able to get 2 quick fouls on Frank Ntilikina, who now had to sit down early in the first quarter, which could definitely hurt the Knicks, as Ntilikina has averaged about 40 minutes per game this series. Offensively though, we didn't really improve. We finished the quarter shooting 37% from the field, we committed 5 early turnovers in this quarter, and apart from Rodney Hood, no one else really found a rhythm. After 12 minutes, therefore, no surprise to see New York with the lead. However, only up by 5, their shooting performance wasn't the most efficient one either. In quarter number 2 then, Frank Ntilikina returned, but he also left again very quickly. He committed his 3rd foul while Andre Flanders finished the layup here, and number 4 followed just a few seconds after that, with Flanders once again driving to the rim. Flanders would then make both free throws, and the second one here would actually put the Legionnaires up by 1. Our shooting numbers were now slowly improving, with Andre Flanders and Bryce Johnson leading the charge off the bench. Flanders scored 9 points this quarter, and Johnson had 6 points and 9 rebounds. Carmelo Anthony did his best to keep his team in the game and scored 7 points of his own this quarter, but the Legionnaires made 2 quick 3-pointers just before the halftime break, Rodney Hood with the first and then Skal Labissière with the second one, and so, after improving much compared to the first quarter, we actually went into the halftime break with a decent 7-point lead. With the first basket of quarter number 3 then, we went up by double digits for the first time. The 3 from Andre Flanders here puts the Legionnaires up by 10, but from that point onwards, things went back and forth for the most part. Things would change a bit, however, when Josh Richardson pulled out what could arguably be the dunk of the year. A windmill slam dunk over 7'3" Kristaps Porzingis, a dunk so nasty we'll show it twice. And that dunk started a huge run, not only for Richardson but also for the entire team. It was Richardson though, who only had 4 points at halftime, who now caught fire, scoring 16 points this quarter, including 8 from the free throw line, and so the Legionnaires win the quarter by 9 points and increase their lead to 16. After Frank Ntilikina then picked up his 5th personal foul on a charge in the 4th quarter, the Legionnaires slowly but steadily began to run away with it. Mitch Dennis scored his first points this quarter, as usual 2 3-pointers, the second one here putting the Legionnaires up by 22 with only 6 minutes left to play. Mohamed Bamba then actually tried to one-up Josh Richardson, driving to the basket and slamming home the 360 dunk, once again with Kristaps Porzingis on the receiving end. And it would get even worse for Porzingis. With less than 4 minutes left to play, Porzingis on the ground with an ankle injury. He had to leave the game at that point and would not return. With 2.5 minutes left to play and still up by 20, we then sent in the reserves, and even though Tyreke Evans promptly led the Knicks on an 11-2 run, it still wasn't enough, and so we once again dribble out the clock to take a commanding 3-1 lead as we head back to Louisville for the next one. Once again, to wrap things up, a quick look at the stats, and just like in every other game of the series, our scoring leader goes by the name of Josh Richardson. He shot 50% from the field on his way to 24 points, but he also did a great job getting to the line where he made 9 of his 10 free throws. Andre Flanders was actually our minutes leader tonight with 29, and he scored the ball pretty efficiently as well on his way to 18 points. For Bryce Johnson then, it wasn't always easy down low. Still, he absolutely feasted inside and finished the game with 16 points and 13 rebounds. Rodney Hood then could have been a bit more efficient, shooting only 6 of 14 and 1 of 6 from deep. Still, he provided some much needed scoring in the first quarter and once again did a fairly good job defending Carmelo Anthony. After the game then, some bad news for the Knicks. Kristaps Porzingis very likely out for the rest of the series with a severe right ankle sprain. So Porzingis out and home court advantage, things aren't looking too bad for Game 5, but before we jump into that, once again let's have a quick look around the league. Out west, the first seed Rockets take a commanding 3-1 lead over the Clippers, while the Thunder do the same against Minnesota. The Warriors demolish the Suns in Game 4 and once again tie up the series, while the 7th seed Jazz take a 3-1 lead against the 2nd seed Kings. Out east, we have the only 2 sweeps of the first round. Cleveland wins the series against the Raptors, and Brooklyn beats Chicago, and so both of those teams will now face off in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Meanwhile, the Sixers-Hornets series remains tied after the Sixers beat the Hornets by 18 points in Game 4. And with that, we are now ready for a potentially series-clinching Game 5. We are back home in Louisville, the Legionnaires are wearing yellow for this one, and without Kristaps Porzingis to protect the paint, the strategy was easy: push the ball inside. and that actually worked pretty well in the first quarter. The Legionnaires scored 19 of their 31 first quarter points in the paint or from the free throw line, and the remaining 12 were three-pointers. Josh Richardson quickly got going with 9 points in the quarter, and so did big man Bryce Johnson, who added 8. The Knicks really only had 2 scoring options on the floor, and those were Carmelo Anthony and Tyreke Evans, and admittedly both of them started off fairly well, scoring 7 points each. Still, the Legionnaires' dominance around the rim was paying off quickly. We out-rebounded the Knicks 17-8 in this first quarter, and that helped us build a comfortable 9-point lead. In the second quarter then, Bryce Johnson, who was already pretty good in the first quarter, became absolutely unstoppable. From the moment the quarter started, Johnson was pretty much scoring at will. He was getting it done around the rim, he ran the fast break, he hit his free throws, and he also made the occasional jump shot, scoring his way up to 14 points in the quarter. However, Bryce Johnson unfortunately wasn't the only one who caught fire in this quarter. It seemed like every time Johnson scored, Carmelo Anthony had an answer, and Anthony also actually finished the quarter scoring 14 points. So as amazing as the performances were this quarter, those two pretty much equaled each other out, and that is why the Knicks were actually able to turn things around. While our offense was focusing more or less exclusively on Bryce Johnson, the Knicks also got some valuable production out of Tyreke Evans. Evans single-handedly went on a 7-0 run to start the quarter for the Knicks, and that was enough to shave 6 points off of a lead. Going into the halftime break, the Legionnaires now only up by 3. To start the third quarter then, the Legionnaires quickly went on an 8-2 run, and after a bit of back and forth, their lead was up to double digits. And even though the Legionnaires put up a pretty good team effort, the man of the quarter was Cavaliers. In only 9 minutes of action this quarter, he put up 8 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists and 2 blocks. He was doing great work on both ends of the court and helped to not only build but also to maintain a double-digit lead. And once again, the plan to attack the Knicks inside paid off big time. The Legionnaires scored 20 points in the paint this quarter, shooting 67% from the field, while the Knicks settled mostly for jump shots, hitting only roughly 1/3 of their attempts. So at the end of 3, the Legionnaires up by 11, and the game plan for the final quarter was clear: continue to attack the paint. However, initially things didn't work quite as planned. The Knicks quickly went on a 6-0 run to start the quarter, and all of a sudden they had the lead cut down to 5. Our bench unit that had started the quarter looked a bit shaken, but not for long. Bryce Johnson and Andre Flanders were quick to step up, the whole team did their job on defense, and the Legionnaires soon went on an 8-0 run. Back up by 13, the starting unit rejoined the game, and with the game and the series on the line, they delivered. Cavaliers found his rhythm in the post and was able to sink a few beautiful fadeaways, while Josh Richardson was hustling on defense. He got himself 3 steals this quarter and ran fast break after fast break, quickly increasing the lead further. And with only 2 players on their roster who were consistently able to score, the Knicks didn't really have an answer. The Legionnaires once again dominated the paint and scored 24 points inside this quarter, and eventually it all was just a bit too much for New York, and the Legionnaires pulled away for good. And so, with Tyreke dribbling out the clock, the Legionnaires win the game by 20 and take the series. A great performance here in Game 5, following through with the game plan, and it absolutely paid off. In their very first playoff appearance, the Louisville Legionnaires now advance to the Eastern Conference semifinals. For the first and only time in this series, we have a different face at the top of the scoring list. Bryce Johnson bullied his way up to 29 points tonight. He also had 8 rebounds and the block and was definitely one of the Legionnaires' best players tonight. Josh Richardson then follows close behind with 26, shooting a ridiculous 11 of 14 from the field, rounding off his stat line with 2 rebounds, 4 assists and 4 steals. Cavaliers also got to work in the post and put up a big double-double with 18 points and 12 rebounds, while Rodney Hood once again didn't have the most reliable shooting night. Still, he wasn't only good for 16 points, but he also dished out 7 assists and was once again one of the Legionnaires' most important playmakers. Andre Flanders also finished the game with 16 points and was a big factor in the early fourth quarter, while Mohamed Bamba was a bit quiet on offense but big on defense, with 5 points, 12 defensive rebounds and 2 rejections. At this point, I think we also have to recognize the performances of Anthony and Evans this series, especially in this game. They did all they could on offense, but the absence of Porzingis was definitely a bit too much for them. And so, even though the two of them combined for 58 points, the Knicks ultimately fall short in Louisville. And so, with the win in the series here, let's simulate ahead a few days, and let's have a look at what's next. Out in the Western Conference, the Houston Rockets have no trouble advancing against the Clippers, and in the Western Conference semifinals, they will now meet last year's champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Golden State Warriors then win a hard-fought series against the Phoenix Suns. In Game 7, however, they managed to advance and will now face the Utah Jazz. Out east, the first matchup already stands for a while. It will be Cavaliers vs Nets, while the Legionnaires are facing a surprise opponent in the next round. The 7th seed Charlotte Hornets actually managed to win the series against the 2nd seed 76ers, and so Philly is out and Charlotte is up next for the Legionnaires. And so, with a brand new series waiting, we will make the cut in today's episode. Once again, it took us a while to get through this, but I think as long as we are in the playoffs, we can spend a bit of extra time. Who knows how long the experience will last. Quick info at this point: by the time this video goes up, I will be on holiday. So first of all, I will very likely not be able to answer any comments, and second, you will very likely have to be a bit patient until the next episode arrives. I will be gone for the entire first week of May, and I fear that when I come back home I have a bit of work waiting for me, so keep that in mind. The series will of course continue, but it might take a few days for me to get back on track. With that being said, let's make the cut right here. As always, if you liked the episode, I would be happy if you could give it a thumbs up. Those longer episodes always take a ton of work, and if you appreciate that, then it's always great to see you show your support. If you want to go a bit further, and maybe also if you want to get notified when the next episode goes up, then go ahead and feel free to subscribe. Simply click on the small trophy icon in the middle of the screen. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.